Hi, everybody. So I have someone I'm super excited to introduce you today. This is Brendan Rothwell.
Hello, hello, hello.
Now, me and Brendan have actually known each other for some time. Like, I'm thinking 25 years, something like that. We're both from England, so we knew each other in London. And then I immigrated here like 19 years ago. And Brendan came, I think, what, 3-4 years after that?
Yeah, 15 years ago we came over here.
Yeah, him and his wife Lisa, they came out too. And Brendan is one of the most talented musicians that I've ever come across. And the reason that, no, seriously, like the reason I wanted to share this, introduce you to him and share his talent and everything with you, is because this isn't something that kind of happened overnight, is it? This is like, how long have you been in music?
Well, I guess for the North Americans, I've been in music since I've been in diapers, right? So 1972, I think, is when I really started hitting the piano keyboard a little bit. And it kind of went from there, right? And I had this fairly strict musical education. Did my grades, did my theory. Piano became then adding to that with violin. I sang as a kid as well, so I got a musical scholarship. It's the only kind of scholastic thing I've ever done of any note, apparently. But so I ended up going to a choir school, quite a famous choir school, and I sang there pretty much every day for about 5 years, and I quit. So I've quit a few things in life, but only for good reason. So I quit when I was, I think, 11. Got a place in the grammar school. Anyway, the list goes on. So I was never very focused on sort of formal and strict education. To this day, I really don't like being told what to do. And so,
Really?
yeah, really, like, you know, imagine that. So I got to 16 years old and decided that was enough. And so I actually quit sort of formal school and went out to get a job. And for the kids watching, what I'm not suggesting is that you do this, right? This is my story. This is not how to do stuff. However, by doing that, I secured a job in music. I was actually selling guitars in my little hometown of York, UK. And then that led to meeting other musicians, and that led to moving to London, and that led to bigger bands, and that led to me growing my hair to, you know, where my belt now sits, and all that stuff. And so back then, you know, while the jazz thing for me was absolutely front and center in my brain, I was having to learn that stuff. And what I was actually playing was rock and metal and progressive rock and all of that really loud, noisy stuff that you can do when you're still in your teens and early 20s and can drink beer and your ears don't bleed, right? So that was really cool and really good fun. Right before we started this interview, I think you remember, I actually found a little framed memento at that time, which I will share with the world today for the first time ever. This is, I think, about 89, maybe 1990-ish kind of time. It's a long time ago. So what you don't see in this photograph is that my hair actually in this picture is longer than the neck of the bass that you can see. So it was a formidable mane is the only way I can describe it. But yeah, so basically all my life, you know, 48 years I've been doing something with music. I've always enjoyed playing. I have always played. And so, you know, pretty much every day for that time, I've done something, whether it's yamming out on a bass for 10 minutes or writing a track on a piano or just playing junk. It really doesn't matter. It's all part of building up your technique and your thinking and your planning. And then if we fast forward to, I guess about 4 years ago, I decided that I should probably finish something in life for the first time. And so that's really why I did that first album, was to sort of prove to myself and the many others on the planet who maybe didn't have quite the confidence in me that I did, that I could actually do something complete. And so the ironically named Time on My Hands album came out, and it did rather well. And so that was the inspiration for me to then actually get off my rear and, you know, do like a real album that's going to do really well and script it for radio and make all those things happen. And it was a strange time. I mean, you know, Lisa, you mentioned my wife. She'd gone through some pretty major planned and very successful surgery. So I was actually playing the nurse here for quite a while. And that's, so I had time. So I used to come down here and write some stuff and, you know, junk 50, 60% of it. And we ended up with the album that is Sentiment. And a lot of the tracks on there, you'll see the titles of those things, and they actually relate to what was going on right here in this house at the time, with recovery from operations and venturing out for little walks to start rehabilitation. You know, it's all in there. It's kind of a cool story if you want to get into it.
Absolutely. And so and I didn't mention this earlier because I just introduced you as my friend. So where Brendan's at right now is that he has released 2 massively successful smooth jazz albums. And the one that you were just talking about was Time on My Hands, right? It was the first one.
Yeah.
You got that there? There you go. That was the first album. So that's on iTunes and Spotify and every online place you can get music. It's there. And obviously got hard copies too that you send out. And I just want you guys to know, like, Brendan doesn't just play. He writes and he produces all his own work. Like, you totally produced that whole album yourself, didn't you?
Oh, well, Sentiment, yeah. Time on My Hands, I produced it for sure. I was very fortunate I could get hold of some really big name players to sort of help me out with that first album. And in fact, the first single I ever put out under my own name was from that first album. And it's a track called This Is the Love. I almost forgot what it was called there because I'm getting very old. Anyway, This Is the Love. It was kind of cool. And I wrote it, you know, on a computer, right? So I had machine drums and all that kind of stuff. And through LinkedIn, because as you know, I do real work as well still to, you know, pay the bills, right? So through LinkedIn, I was able to connect with a guy called Pooji Bell. And for anybody watching and listening who isn't a musician, you need to go out and find Pooji Bell's music as well. So Pooji is a wonderful human being. He has a wonderful wife who's a chef and keeps him fed. And he has a wonderful son who's now getting into music production himself. Pooji, though, I met probably 20 years ago, first time, and he was the drummer for Marcus Miller, which to me is like the right hand of whoever you believe in, because Marcus Miller is the reason that I play bass, you know, as my primary instrument. And so I sent a message to Pooji Bell. I said, "Dear Pooji Bell, you don't know me and I know you, and this will be cool, and what do you think?" And so the wonders of Dropbox and PayPal, and we figured out a deal. And so Pooji Bell ended up playing drums on my first single. And that first single, here in my little hometown of, usually a little warmer than today, Calgary, Canada. Of course, we're all locked down right now. We don't see anybody. But it did net me this, which is the People's Choice Award for the YYC Music Awards back in 2017, which actually seems like so long ago now.
You know, well, I remember coming and watching that and watching you get that. Time's like disappeared. Like, look at what you've achieved since then.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So we took that, you know, we built that, which is it's a great piece for me. I mean, this is where I live, right? I want to share this with people where I live as well as anybody else. So getting that recognition was super, super important for me. It definitely did me some favors as well, because people outside of my little world start to see that and the recognition that it gets. I'll share this with you. I know we chatted yesterday briefly to line up this conversation. Yesterday, I was on track to break a bit of a milestone with my Spotify numbers. And we just checked it this morning over breakfast, and I've actually broken 700,000 streams now on Spotify, which apparently is quite good. So yeah, we're quite happy with that.
No, that's awesome. I could sit and talk like this all day, and I just want people to know that we're going to talk about some more things. And I know that people that are watching might be just starting to play instruments or play them, or want to get more into the music industry, or just do this for fun or for passion or whatever. So I want to pull some of your thoughts out, and so you can pass on some words and, you know, help people out here.
Sure.
But we're also going to get Brendan to play. Like, he's in his studio right now. He does all his recording from there. He has a ton of guitars, and we were just running through some stuff just before this interview about what he was going to showcase. What we would love to do is for him to play some of his tracks that he's released from this album, which was Sentiment. That's the one right now that's out, going crazy. The problem we've got is with this Zoom interview, it's not cut out it's an interview platform. Thank you. It's an interview platform. So what it does is it mutes the sound so that one person can be heard very clearly at a time. So when you start putting multiple sounds, like different layers of instruments, the whole sound just gets really warped and blurred and cuts out. So trying to do that is not going to do us any favors. So what we decided was Brendan's actually going to give us some demonstrations on his different instruments, of riffs he can do, some sounds that you would hear, maybe some of the stuff he'll play. If you are a guitar player, you can rewind this interview back and kind of play along with it and kind of, you know, have some fun with that. So we're going to get to that shortly. I do have a few more questions that I want to ask you, because the fun part's the music, obviously. But one of the things that I want to ask you, Brendan, is like, we always have, there's this this term that everybody knows, where we think that anybody who's in the arts, so struggling artists, struggling musicians, we have this word struggling because it just seems that it's so hard in any creative industry to really get success and make money. And when we hear about people, it feels like they just appeared overnight and got this overnight fame. So you're a reality, true story of having been in this for what, 40 plus years, where you've just been you know, learning and honing your craft and so on. And it's only really been in the last sort of 4 or 5 years that finally, that, you know, that the tables have turned and you're getting a lot of acclaim in your field that you do, right? So my question to you, for everybody else, is what is it that you've done differently to make that happen? Because I've watched it happen in real time. But just share with everyone the things that you've done in the last couple of years that have really propelled you, you know, up on that up curve and got you to where you are right now in your...
Yeah. So I want to address the struggling part briefly. And what I would say is this, that, you know, everybody has struggles, right? So if you're going to be a musician, or you want to paint stuff, or you want to cut people's hair, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. Honestly, it's 90% attitude and approach.
Yeah.
Nobody has great days every day, right? In my sort of real world job right now, the world is locked down because of what's going on with COVID-19. My week last week, I ended up being rightly, you know, sent home, work from home, do the stuff. That in its own right is a challenge, because I'm surrounded by, you know, pianos and basses, and I don't want to do work, I want to play, but there's things we have to do, right? So is that a good day or a bad day? That could be a great day. There's struggles within it, but if you focus on what the goal is and you achieve the goal, that's a great day. It's no different in music. The problem is in music that so many people, and I almost landed there myself, it's not even their decision. So many people are pushed into situations, quite often, you know, by the generation before, or by the education institution that they're a part of. And it's, if you do this, you'll be the best thing ever. And that's probably very true, but being the best thing ever doesn't equate to money and income necessarily.
Right.
And so, you know, I mentioned at the start about my somewhat less than salubrious exit from the education system in the mid-1980s. I don't recommend that to anybody. But what I would say is education now compared to 30 years ago is amazingly available because of things like this, right? There's online platforms. You can basically learn anything you want. And for somebody who wants to be in music, you have to understand the concepts of business. Yeah. Not the music business, business. And then if you can apply that to selling guitars or moving around people in North America during COVID-19 to try and do something to support the oil infrastructure that we operate here in the US, it's actually no different. And one of the startling things that I realized probably 2.5, 3 years ago is that in my sort of real world job, once my first album broke, people used to come and talk to me about it and say, wow, it's amazing. And I used to say, is it? Or is it the result of focus and hard work? Because ironically, before it was famous, everybody would say, oh, that's nice. You play a bit of guitar as a hobby, right? I'm like, okay. I'm not going to dispute that. But but how well do you play it, and what is the goal? And I actually never had a focused goal. I loved playing for years, and then I decided, okay, my goal is let's put an album out. And then the goal was supported by, why would you do that if you don't believe in it enough to make it work? And so I think that's the misstep, unfortunately, for a lot of creatives in general, specifically in music, is that we get locked into what we think is cool or happening or now or whatever, and you know, you're either late or so early no one cares. But having some understanding of business of whatever type is absolutely going to support you through those struggling times, right?
So tell me a couple of the things that you actually did. So you made your album, and there it is. So you got this recording. What do you do with it? Because, you know, before the internet came up, we were talking about this before. You know, if you wanted to sort of get into you were sending literally, you know, hard copy tapes to A&R guys from music companies, you with millions of other people that did, just praying and hoping that someone might hear it, and someone might hear it and actually think it's any good, and then they might take it to a meeting and have other people hear it, and if they thought it was any good, then it might, do you know what I mean? It like took so long, and to ever get on a radio or to a DJ or anything like that, they were just up here somewhere. It was almost like it was virtually impossible. But with the internet now, I mean, that's completely changed everything. I know that was a huge thing for you. So what did you do? You had this album that you'd created. So how did you get it to where it's at now? What was just, maybe, I know there's a ton of work you did, but maybe just list like the top 3 things that you did to get your music out there. What did you do?
Yeah, okay. So I would go back to, you know, interesting at this point in time where we can't physically be next to people, but we actually want to connect with people. It's leveraging a network. So I'll give a little shout out here to my buddy Miles Gilderdale back in the UK. Miles I've known since the early 80s. He was and remains one of the most prolific guitar players I've ever been near, let alone seen play. And he had the album, so I'd sent him a CD, and it's like, you know, it's a friend, right? Hey, here's the thing I've done, and he came back actually with his band's manager. So Miles plays for Acoustic Alchemy. If, you know, folks out there want to check that out as well. And they came back and said, you know, this is actually pretty good. You might want to think about promoting it. So to your point, years ago. And part 2 of this interview will be me reading the rejection letters that I still have from Sony and CBS and all those guys. So they hooked me up with a few people that are currently in the music industry. And one of those specifically was a lady called Sandy Shaw, and that really is her name. And she lives right by the sea in the Monterey Bay area. I know, really.
I was thinking of Sandy Shaw, the musician, and then when he said the beach, I'm like, oh God, there's a pun.
No, I know, right? Everybody does it.
I know.
Sandy is a huge name in, well, now internet radio. I mean, she was a DJ when radio was still a thing, you know, tune it in, get some sound. Now you just kind of reboot and it's all there. So she's actually the CEO and the founder of smoothjazz.com. And I will happily share this as well, is that for years I'd avoided the smooth jazz label. I didn't understand it or know it. What I knew of it was Kenny G and slightly bizarre hotel lobby saxophone. And actually, when you get into it, there's some freaking amazing players out there right now, and Kenny G. But I mean, you know, give the guy his credit. He's taken $1 billion out of the planet and put it into his own bank account, right? So good man. So Sandy picked up on this and said, yeah, we love this track. This is the love. You should do this. And so this is where the business piece comes in, right? So you have to accept that if you want to buy something, it usually involves a transaction of something called money. And so we figured that out. We promoted the track. That led to me speaking to a couple of other guys I'll give a shout to, which is Cliff Garoff and Cliff's son, Jason Garoff. And these guys, based again down in the US, and they're, I guess, what you would call the old school of the music business. So they actually plug tracks to radio stations, you know, like the Billboard stations and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So we had a conversation with them, figured out a transaction, made the transaction happen. They started their work. What that allowed me to do was then really not sit back and wait, but sit back and watch what they were doing and how they were doing it. And all the time strengthening my own little music business network of other DJs and other artists, with a view to leveraging that network as things started to take off. So that's what I did. What that's done is that now, as well as the Sentiment album just going crazy, I mean, we sat at #1 globally for 5 weeks last summer, which, you know, that's kind of cool. We then now are getting invites to play on other people's music, right? So there's a single out right now from a sax player from sort of Washington State, US, called R.L. Walker. And his track is out, and I pushed it to about 30 or 40 of the DJs that I know across North America and into Europe. Within a day, it's on the shows. Because now with the internet, if you're willing to put in the work to strengthen the network, the facilitation of that is simple. We transfer or whatever Dropbox profile you want to use.
Yeah.
You know, learn the business piece of it, learn the value of things like metadata, right? Get your tracks registered, get your copyrights done, and it will start to happen. But believe in your product and believe in what your goal really is.
I think something you just mentioned there is really key, collaboration, because again, now it's like, you know, I'll put this video out on my page because people are watching this because they know me, but because now I've collaborated with you, they now know you. And so now that's given new people, and then you post that, people get to hear about me, and so on and so on. So that's kind of like the power of the internet. I mean, it's huge. And I think it's important to be really clear about your brand and what you're putting out and what you specialize in. But I know for a fact that you've collaborated with some people that aren't your style, right? Just recently, like you've been on a couple of like hardcore rock tracks and so on, which you put out. And I mean, I'm really not a rock fan at all, but I kind of, you put it out there. I was like, this is interesting. Like here you are, this kind of like, you know, moody jazz guy. And I'm like, and I played it. I was like, holy crap, this is awesome. And it blew my mind, because what it did was it showed me how talented you are, how resourceful, because you can play a whole other style and still be completely cool in what you play. I love it. And so, but in that, now you've introduced yourself to that whole other niche, which is, and so on and so on. And so, like you say, like you're playing on other people's tracks in their style, but it's introducing you to their audiences too, right?
Yeah, and that particular video that you're referencing, so it's pretty epic, right? Like it's a 9-minute mini movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a full film crew to do that. I was down at the set for just over half a day with the band doing that stuff, and it was like being back in the 80s. I had my own smoke machine guy. We actually had a guy who did the smoke machine. I'm like, a little less smoke, a little more smoke, please. It's so much fun. And so for those watching, go and check it out. The band's name is Heyoka's Mirror, which I think is HEYOKA''S Mirror, like the thing.
Yeah.
The track is called Asylum, and yeah, don't watch it with the kids around.
Yeah. It's long too, isn't it? It's like 11 minutes or something.
No, I think it's 9 minutes. It's the radio edit version.
Okay, but you've got it, isn't it on your page on Facebook?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yes.
Brendan's he's obviously got his own personal page, Brendan Rothwell, but you've also got Brendan Rothwell. And when you look at the profile picture for it, if you're trying to find it on Facebook, it's like a big black BR on a white background, right? Oh, you got it.
Yeah, or it might be a white one on a black background.
Oh, it might be that.
Yeah.
If you go and look at that on Facebook, Brendan puts all the links to his music, but you put that Heyoka's Mirror. Is that right? Is that the name?
Heyoka's Mirror, yeah.
I said it right, yeah. That link's on there, and it links you to you. Go and watch it. It's so freaking cool. It's so anti everything you've ever done, but it's like something out of the Matrix. It's really awesome. But it just gives you an idea of like the talent that Brendan's got. Like he can just flip. And I kind of want to get onto that because I think everybody's just dying to hear you play. I have one personal question, and this is something that I would have asked in my Facebook Live just before this video went out. I am realizing that so many people have a huge fear of judgment, and that's what stops them putting out what they're really, really passionate about. So we all have this little thing living inside of us where we want to be, I don't know, a singer or you know, a musician or an actor or a dancer, or we've got like this budding story that we want to write. Like everybody has something. I know they do. And the reason we suppress it and don't do it is because at some point we felt we weren't good enough, or somebody told us we weren't good enough. And it is a huge, huge battle. I'm noticing that from just literally asking all the people I know, can I do a Zoom interview with you? Can you get on my Facebook with me? And people are like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know, you know, what if no one wants to watch it? What if no one likes it? It's huge. And I personally grew up very musical too. And I've never really, I did some singing stuff, like pop, like stuff, like back in, you know, when I was early 20s.
I have your album of top recorder hits.
Don't. But the reason I really never came out of my shell and pushed it was because I was really terrified about what everybody would think. So yeah, get me, you know, with a few drinks on a karaoke machine or down in your studio, and I just bust out. And I'm very musical, but I've never done that as a career because I didn't believe in myself. So I know that there's a lot of air guitarists, basement guitarists, people that are in their complete own world who just absolutely have a huge passion and desire to do all this, but they have people around them, maybe like families and friends, that are like, oh God, like, what are you doing, you know, like, get a real job and stuff like that. How, like, you just, and maybe this is your, sorry, this is a really long question, but maybe it's because
this is a question.
It is a question. I'm getting to the point. I'm getting there. But, you know, you're musical, like you said, since, you know, the day you could stand up and play a piano. So maybe for you, that's not even a fear there. It's just part of your life and who you are. But how, like, if I just said to you, here's a guitar, Brendan, can you just quickly play me something? I know you would do it and not even think about it. But for someone else, it's like, oh God, everybody's staring at me. What are they? How do you get over that fear of judgment for you as a musician? Like, to take the opportunities to be able to just play and impress people and not worry about what anyone thinks. How do you get over that?
What was the question?
Do you like orange juice?
Yeah.
There you go, that was easy.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue for a lot of people. I would say a couple of things is the more that you do whatever it is you're doing, if you focus on why you're doing it, and if you believe that constantly improving it is a good thing, the fear of people judging you fades away, right? So my fear of people judging me when I drop myself into the smooth jazz world was, oh, people will think it's smooth jazz. Well, it is. And you know what? There's a ton of people out there that love it. And so it's not so much the judging by others. I mean, that's a normal fear thing, right? But, you know, big shirts and sunglasses can help you get over that quite easily. It's actually getting over yourself.
Yeah.
And once you do that, and you kind of go, well, I did this jazz thing, and that's cool. Then I've done this progressive metal thing with some guys that, you know, are probably half my age and really good, by the way. So out of that, you can either worry about, will my smooth crowd move away? No, they loved it. I got people, Vanessa and Nathan, I'm going to shout them out as well. They're in North Carolina. They're huge fans of what I do. And they've seen that stuff as well. They're not turning away. It's fun. It's different. And I think getting over yourself is the big thing. And I think that's an age thing as well. You know, as you develop and you start to learn more stuff, you can help yourself get over it. But it really is that, right? And so rather than getting all uptight about, well, the smooth crowd move, or the prog metal guys think I'm too old or don't have enough hair, which has been suggested, the reality is that out of it came smooth metal, right? And so I mean, well, that's okay. I can live with that. No one's going to get upset by that, right? So I guess it's more of a spoon, you know, than the knife. But it's a good thing. But that really is the thing. Just getting over yourself, right? We all have a part to play and a place to play it in. And any of us can get upset. Any of us can start throwing things out of the stroller and doing all that. It's not going to help. If you believe in what you do, and hopefully if what you do is doing some good for other people, keep on keeping on, is all I'm going to say to you.
I think that's where the internet has really helped, because before we had this, if let's imagine you're playing your instrument in your house, who hears it? The people you live with, the neighbors, maybe any friends that come and watch. And if they don't like it, that's kind of where you start to judge, well, I must be really shit then because nobody likes this. So shatters your dream, right? Now, if you think about it, there's what? I don't know how many people there are in the world right now, like 6 billion or something like that in the world.
7.5.
7.5, holy crap. Okay, 7.5 billion people in the world. So the minute you put yourself online, guess what happens? The 10 people that live around you might think that you're shit, but when you put your stuff out there, there's 7.5 billion people that are looking, and out of that, even if you got 100 that really liked you, out of that,
Right.
somebody likes what you do, and that is where I think the positive side of that is. And the good thing is that when you've got people that do like you online, guess what they do? They share your stuff, and then they introduce
Right.
you to more and more and more and more people. And I think that's been a big part of your success, isn't it, so far?
Absolutely, and it's been genuine with people, right?
Right.
Vanessa and Nathan are a great example. I got an email from Vanessa a few months ago to say, you know, they really enjoy my music. And I won't chew up all the time, and I won't give out personal stuff here. But long story short, Nathan had some surgery. It wasn't, you know, he had some issues, some complications, and they're cool. Like, the first email arrived, I'm like, this is cool, right? It happens quite a lot now, not to sound flippant about it, but it's great that people say, hey, I got your music and I love it. That was her email. That night, she phoned me. And the funniest thing, so, I mean, my phone rings, I pick it up, and all I hear is Vanessa screaming and then saying, I can't believe you picked up. And I said, it's my phone. Who else is going to pick up? And it's gone for, like, we chat all the time, you know, and it's amazing to think that without the internet, that probably would never have happened.
Right.
And also, it's just the ease, right? Email me, message me, it doesn't matter. It's all good. No one's too big to deal with that stuff.
Yeah.
I love getting that interaction piece from people, and it leads to amazing discussions and new opportunities to play or get involved in something. And it's all the way up the tree. You know, we were just down in California, thankfully, a month ago, before everything that's blowing up now blew up, with some immense names in music. And one of those immense names at the end of this festival came over and did something that now is illegal, apparently. He actually gave me a hug and looked at me and said, keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And from the person that said that, that's absolute gold-plated approval of what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I will.
Awesome. We're going to get on with some music now. I know you're itching, and I know everybody wants to hear what you're going to do. So I'm just going to leave this up to you. I mean, you've got some different instruments there. You're going to show us some of your stuff. And what we'll do at the end of that is we'll just round up how you can get in touch with Brendan if you've got any questions, if you're happy to hear from people, but also we'll point you to where you can buy his music and visit his website and Facebook page and so on. But right now, let's get on with the music. Show us what you can do, Brendan.
Well, we chatted about bass, right, and bass being cool. So what I'll do, if I can, is just detune this thing. So this is a 4-string bass. This is the bass that anybody watching who has a bass at home, probably it looks like this. 4-string bass is kind of the normal, right? We have 5-string basses and 6-string basses, and it's all very cool. But 4 is really where it's at. It's definitely where the funk is at. The track that got me into playing bass, like the actual song, was Marcus Miller. So I mentioned him earlier, right? Marcus Miller played on a Miles Davis album called Tutu. And the title track of that album, it was 1986. It came out, I was 16. And I heard it and I said, okay, I get it. I understand, you know, some of where it's from musically. And I don't understand that sound, but that sound has to be me. And so it's this. Which I know, right? But to me, that's the coolest thing on the planet. So what I did was I managed to get some money together, I think, somehow, and I bought a really cheap bass. It was a Hohner Jazz copy. This is a Fender Jazz. It's black with a white scratch plate, and I bought this one. Actually, I bought it from a guy called Chad Hazard. It's his real name. Here in Calgary, I think in 2008, and I bought it because it's beautiful and Chad's a great guy. And mainly because it's black and white. This is exactly the same look as my cheap Hohner bass where I started off. So that was the Tutu thing. And from there, remember this is the mid-80s, I'm living in the UK. There was a guy called Mark King who had a thumb and a bass in a band called Level 42. And so Level 42 is where all the slap thing from people that are my color, the slap thing started to generate, right? Marcus is a very, very different shade of me and an unbelievable bass player. But for those of us who have my skin tone, it's a little different approach, and we think very differently about music, and we separate notes differently, and it's a cool thing. And so what I then got into was level 42. And that, and I'm only going to play this because I know you'll remember this one, Kirstey, but that was this sound. Sing. No. Play the recorder. No. You actually do have a recorder there, right?
I was about to sing then, and yes, I do have a recorder. It's right here.
Oh, here we go. And
I will put myself back on mute. Continue.
Okay, so that's level 42, right? This is a real fast track to the 80s, 90s, whatever. Then we were back to Marcus Miller and sort of learning the Marcus Miller stuff. And then, obviously, everybody knew about Prince, right? But then I started really listening to Prince, the bass player. And most people think of Prince as a singer, an unbelievably good-looking guy, a guitar hero, an amazing... He is all of those things and more. Fundamentally, he is the greasiest bass player you'll probably ever hear. And I don't even profess to play that stuff, but the sound of that stuff was something like this kind of thing. Greasy.
Love it.
So let's go back to the 80s for a second. I've got to change basses real quick here. So that's the 4-string Fender Jazz, which everybody knows and loves. This is a 4-string, very old, fretless bass. And this one I thought we'd look at because fretless is a different sound, right? So fretless, you remember this one, hopefully. Yeah, and thankfully you're on mute. That's okay. Fretless is a wicked thing. I don't play it often. Actually, most guys don't play it often unless their name is Pino Palladino. It's not an easy thing, right? Literally, there's no frets. It's kind of like playing blind. But the sound... Very, very different. So we love that. You wanted to hear some acoustic bass as well, I think. Let me just grab an acoustic bass for you, because this is different again.
I love that one you just did. I could sit and listen to that all day long.
Yeah, it's a fun thing. You know, it's on the albums, right? So it's in there. The sound is in there, but to really play that, it's a thing in its own right. And yeah, Pino Palladino is a guy everyone watching should go and check out. He did play that line for Paul Young in the 1980s. But you know, he's a great example of a guy that has shown he's not just one type of player. So he did the Paul Young thing. That's really what made him famous as a bass player. He's toured with a ton of people. I mean, he plays bass for The Who, right? The Who. I saw him last here in Calgary. I don't know when, it was probably 5 years ago. There's a little band called 9 Inch Nails who are not known for writing nursery rhymes and fluffy kitten stuff, right? Unbelievable, right? And Pino just walks out. He's over 6 foot tall. He just stands. He's as thin as a stick. Stands with a bass and pumps this stuff out. And you've got Trent Reznor, like 8 feet from him, just pouring hell and hate on the world. And it's really good. So yeah, check out Pino's playing. He has quite a bit of online stuff as well. I don't think he teaches online necessarily, but you know, he probably would negotiate. This is the acoustic. This is beautiful. This one, actually, this very bass is that very bass. So the cover of the Time on My Hands album, we set up some funky green screen stuff and used the Tacker mic. This is real different though, for sure. It's more like an acoustic guitar, right? It's a big jumbo body. You can plug it in, and it's cool. But some of the different techniques and sounds on this, of course, it's a bigger instrument. You get the sort of flamenco. Beauty, right? Yay! And then, I don't know where we're doing for time here. We're probably over time, but what we should do is
this is fine. We're good. We've probably got like another 10 minutes, so I'd really love to get more smooth jazz stuff that you're likely to come across on Brendan's albums.
Right. So this is where this thing comes in. This is a rather wonderful Canadian-made 6-string bass. So, you know, we talked about the 4. We started on the 4. I play a Fender 5-string as well, which is fundamentally the same as the 4-string with an extra low B. When you go 6-string, a few things happen. Your brain fries, firstly, and when you've descrambled that and served it back into your cranium, you figure out what's going on. And so with a 6-string bass, we've got a 4-string bass in the middle, and then we have an extra low and an extra high string. And so what it does is it puts your bass range all the way down here, super low, but also takes my bass range all the way up here. So then you think about a track, right? A song, whatever it is that you've written or you cover or whatever. What becomes your voice? So my human voice is a little strange, I understand. It's born in Yorkshire, it lived in London, and now it resides in Canada. So I think we just call that life. I also, having sung as a kid, I actually don't sing now. I'm beginning to sing again. I will share that with the world, but don't hold your breath. But this became really my musical voice. This and the Fender bass became my musical voice. And so through technique, and then also through continuing to expand your understanding of what bass really is, it is your voice, right? I am fortunate beyond my comprehension and wildest dreams that now people will actually message me or call or whatever and say, I heard a track and I knew it was you. Like, wow, right? You think how many people play bass really, really well, or play guitar really, really well. There's a bazillion people on YouTube right now that are playing stuff really, really well. And the difference sometimes is simply, so what do you want to do with that? If you want to be the best bass player on YouTube, totally go for it. It totally gets my recommendation. But that wasn't the goal. The goal was to play and be heard and see if people figured it out. So the Dingwall gives you a ton of different options, a ton of different tones. And I'll maybe just throw a couple of little things out and see where we're at. Not what most people think of as bass, right? But if you dive into this so-called smooth jazz world, you'll find, you know, players, I mean, Marcus Miller's in there, obviously, right? Guys like Wayne Tisdale. Wayne Tisdale, you have to hear, unbelievable. The guy was a basketball player his whole career. Loved music, picked up a bass, and you hear him play, you just think, wow, this guy was born to play bass, but he was born to be a sportsman, right? And ended up playing bass. There's a ton, and there's young guys, a guy called Blair Bryant right now. I don't know how old he is, but he's definitely not in my generation. Killer technique, songwriting, everything just notched up all the way. And so it's kind of exciting to see that and to be a part, you know, and yeah, absolutely, to have some recognition for what I've managed to do. And it's all part of how you play your part in that little world as well. And that little world is thankfully still growing, and the audience for it is definitely still growing. Interestingly, at this point in time, with pretty much the world on lockdown, music's going to play a pretty important part. So we'll see how the next couple of months go on that front, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm getting the internet's unstable. I don't know if it's because we're on here for a long time, or it's the time of day. It's lunchtime, so I guess lots of people in the world are on here right now. So I'm probably just going to end this here. But yeah. Thank you. This has been so awesome. It's been really insightful. And my thought is, like, the thing that's frustrating me with this is the sound quality, and it's just of this platform. Because while you were playing, some of it was just cutting out a little bit. It's got nothing to do with you. It's obviously just a platform. So what I would urge everybody to do is, Brendan, I know you play on Facebook Live direct sometimes. Sometimes you're just like jamming away, like, you know, playing and coming up with ideas.
Yeah.
I know you do that live sometimes. Is that on your personal Brendan Rothwell page, or is that on your the business page? Where do you put it live?
I try and put it on the artist page, yeah.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, whenever I can, I do that. So that's the @Rothwell Bass. Let's see if I have it. Here we go. @Rothwell Bass. So it's the same kind of name for, if you can see that, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all that good stuff as well.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll post stuff there. And actually, you know, just this morning we were going through some of the video from the Carmel show, which was like the coolest thing, right? So I was actually playing in the main lodge at, the main bar at Quail Lodge, which is one of the beautiful golf courses down there, hosting what they call Brendan's Bar, which is slightly ironic. And so I was there, and they gave me for the weekend a couple of young players from a band called the Peak Project, and they're from Hungary, and killer. I mean, you know, the drummer just slayed it. So the goal was for us to play, and then some of these other big names would hopefully come along and join in, and they did. And so this video on the Friday, there's a flute player called Kim Scott, who is a #1 Billboard artist, folks. She just hung out at the bar. I think she may have had a glass of wine, and brought a flute, and we just played. And we just played music. There's no rehearsal. There's no pressure. You know, again, no one's trying to outdo anybody else. So it's people playing music, right? And on the Saturday, she came back. So, you know, my job is to sort of MC this thing. I said, well, folks, Kim Scott's here in the audience. Maybe she'll come and play. Well, she didn't have a flute with her, because her flute was back on the big stage where the big names were playing that night, right? I said, well, you sing, right, Kim? I've heard you sing. So she just walked up with her phone. She actually Googled the words to Superstition, and we just kicked it off. And there's video of that. So there's her. There's a young artist called Malin, who was with her, came and sang as well. And then Oliver from Peak Project on keyboards and vocoder, and Marcel, who, from a drummer's perspective, watch the video for him. Just go watch it for him and tell me that that's not happening. He's unbelievable. So the reason I mention it is it's on my Facebook artist page, posted this morning, and definitely worth a watch. Here's the media again, @Rothwell Bass. You are welcome. I would encourage anybody who, you know, uses email still, so probably my age or older, you can email me, right? It's a thing, it's supposed to message. And then, you know, the CDs, right? People still do like to buy CDs. So this is how we can do that. You can just message me, email me, phone me, whatever you want to do. We can figure out where you live and what the postage will be, and we'll get the stuff shipped off in one of these. Very, very handy, very, very cool.
And anyone that is digital, they can get all of your music on iTunes, CD Baby, Spotify. You just go on there. You can hear like an intro of the music. So if you like the track, you can buy the tracks individually or the whole album too, right?
Yeah, you can. Or, just if you just go to the site as well, right? So brendanrothwell.com.
Yeah.
Probably isn't showing up too well.
Yeah, that's okay.
You can see it, yeah. So if you jump in there, each album has its own little page, and each page has exactly that. It's the iTunes kind of previews and the Spotify previews. Amazon is big. They sell a ton of CDs to me now, which is kind of cool. Or just message me. Like, everybody in the world right now doesn't have a great deal else to do, so drop me a line, we'll figure it out. I'm working on new material, though, which is cool. So this time, my Monday to Friday gig is going to be obviously literally mentally locked down, getting some of that stuff figured out because it's a little intense. And then evenings and weekends, we're just going to be writing some new material and getting some new keyboard sounds going. And
so this is for album 3?
See what happens for next year. This will be for album 3, yeah. I've got a new single coming out May 1. We just sort of landed that negotiation yesterday. So Think of You from the Sentiment album is going to be a single, effective May 1. And then really the remainder of this year is wrap up some writing and recording and obviously mixing and mastering and all that stuff and have a new product out for 2021.
That's so awesome. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Super appreciate it. Going to end this here, and we'll get I'll put this video out on my Facebook, and then we'll get your details. I'll get them printed out on Facebook too, so it's easy. You would just click on and link directly to you. Cool. Brilliant. Well, enjoy the weekend and the next few weeks, months of hanging out home.
Yeah, we're gonna have the cleanest house in Calgary, right?
I know. All right, enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for your time.
Thanks, Kirstey. See you soon.
All right, see ya. Bye.